Welcome to Athletes Unfiltered, the podcast made by the athlete for the fans. Now here are your hosts, Adrian Martinez and Geoff Ekstrom.
Well, hello again, everyone. Welcome in to episode number 3 of Athletes Unfiltered. As always, I'm your host, Geoff Ekstrom. Alongside me, former Nebraska quarterback and current Wildcat, Adrian Martinez. Adrian, another episode. It's great to see you.
Yeah, great to be here. Really excited about this episode. Former teammate, all-time favorite, tremendous leader, tremendous person, and it'll be a good one. You guys will enjoy it.
Luke Gifford, former Cornhusker and current Dallas Cowboy, gives insights at his time as a Cornhusker and right now in the NFL. It's a great episode. You're not going to want to miss it. But before we get to that, we've had some things change in the football landscape here lately. We've had the Super Bowl and the college football playoff not expanding. We'll talk about both. First, let's talk about the big game, the Super Bowl. The Los Angeles Rams defeating the Bengals to win their first franchise Super Bowl. And Adrian, I thought it was a good game. I think it wasn't memorable in any way to me, but it was a very solid game. And I think with considering the playoff games we had before it, I guess it doesn't kind of live up to those, but still a very solid Super Bowl.
Yeah, it was solid. And I would say it holds a little bit better rank than that for me. I enjoyed it. Really, going into the big game, I just want a good game. You know, too often we see blowouts. We see one team come out and just light it up and it's over. You know, those are the worst. No one likes that. So for that reason, I think it was more than just even solid. It was a good, entertaining game. The reason it's not one of the greats, even though it included a late drive to win the game, is both teams weren't really playing at high levels, offensively. That's what the people want to see. The Bengals, really, outside of 2 huge plays, one really being an offensive pass interference by T. Higgins, they wouldn't have scored any points. No. They wouldn't have. They had a huge play to Jamari Chase early in the game, and then the T. Higgins play that led to points. They kind of struggled. And the Rams, they start out kind of hot, but in the middle of the game and going even into the beginning of the fourth quarter, real choppy. They couldn't run the ball and had a bad stretch, but came up with it in the end. And really, they lucked out in that they have Aaron Donald. I mean, I shouldn't maybe say lucked because the guy's been great for however long. He made all those plays down the stretch. I know the Bengals, kind of the thing we talked about and what a lot of other outlets talked about was the matchup between the Rams defensive line and the Bengals offensive line. And for the really until first half, it was fine. The Bengals were holding up. They were doing a really good job. They weren't doing a ton offensively, but they weren't giving up sacks, which was big. The second half, they gave up 7 sacks, which tied a Super Bowl record.
With 7, by the way.
7 sacks. Not good in one half, right? So I enjoyed it. It was entertaining. Aaron Donald played really great. Matthew Stafford with an incredible no-look pass on the last drive. There was theatrics involved, injuries at play, all in an incredible stadium in Los Angeles. So, and a great halftime performance too. So I think that elevates the game a little bit. A great halftime performance. It was all around a good production.
Cooper Kupp, best offensive season of all time, no matter what position. And I don't think
is that your take?
That's my take.
Your take? Interesting.
Triple crown leader, Super Bowl MVP, offensive player of the year. They screwed him over by not giving him MVP, but it's okay. He won the Super Bowl. So
who won the MVP this year?
Aaron Rodgers, 2-time.
Of course. Yeah. It is a quarterback-driven league.
Yes,
but
I understand.
Those statistics you just listed, I think you said it's a 3rd ever all-time Triple Crown winner, maybe 4th, something like that, on a pretty exclusive list. Super Bowl MVP. it's hard to disagree with you because he's had an incredible year and his story is even better. I mean, I think last year was the year he was hurt, right? Or was it the year before?
I can't remember.
I'm not sure, but his story, if you guys haven't heard about it, which I'm sure you have if you're listening to this podcast, I mean, Eastern Washington, I watched an interview of him in high school where they were asking him about like what his plans were after playing, like when he was done with this season, like thinking he was done playing football, like, so what do you, like, you're done after this year. What are your plans? He's like, well, I hope to keep playing football and blah, blah, blah. And the guys never stopped, never quitted, got hurt, came back, hit it up with Matthew Stafford. You heard about the 6 a.m. meetings every day. I mean, that stuff is like what gets you fired up, what it's about. And he balled out. And that last drive, I mean, they went to him constantly, almost force feeding him. I was actually watching the game on tape a little bit earlier today, and just an underrated aspect. Matthew Stafford, who has a cannon of an arm, he gets late throwing Cooper Kupp the ball. They were probably around the 40-yard line. Throws him like a 10-yard out route from the number 3 slot position. Underthrows it. Kupp is smothered, but he has incredible body control, comes back to the ball and makes the catch, just snatches in. It looks so easy, but playing the game and throwing to guys, and that is so hard. And to do it on the biggest stage, crunch time, like it was second nature. I'm really adding to your argument, but the guy's a stud.
I'll give you a fact before we move on. Cooper Kupp, he won all those awards like I mentioned. Jerry Rice, I don't know if you heard about it. Jerry Rice is the only other wide receiver to win Super Bowl MVP, Triple Crown, and Offensive Player of the Year. And he did that in a career.
Only he did it this year. Okay.
Cooper Kupp did it in 1 year.
That's hard to argue. It's hard to. I can't. I wish I knew you would have said something. I would have came with a better argument, like at least something to counter that. But I can't.
There you go. Argue one. Love it. Now, but you have an argument here. You have a hot take about Matthew Stafford, now a Super Bowl winning quarterback.
Yeah. Well, the day after the Super Bowl, ESPN and Fox and whoever else just can't let it rest. But they're already making an argument that he's a Hall of Fame quarterback. Which is, it's ridiculous. Matthew Stafford has one All Pro mention. It might be just a Pro Bowl for all I know. Pro Bowl, it doesn't mean anything. I hate to say it. There's like 10 alternates. Like 5 guys don't even play every year, and you have Mac Jones as your Pro Bowl quarterback, and he's not in the top tier of the league. You have middle of the pack. I mean, he's a rookie, but middle of the pack quarterbacks playing in the Pro Bowl. All Pro is where it's at. That is when you are at the top of the league. He's put up great stats, never won a playoff game until this year. Obviously, they won the Super Bowl, did pretty well. He had Calvin Johnson, Megatron, arguably one of the best receivers of all time. One Super Bowl does not make him a Hall of Fame quarterback. He needs to put together a couple more seasons, get a couple more individual accolades to join that elusive, exclusive class that is the Hall of Fame. When you look at Hall of Fame quarterbacks in the recent generation, those guys have incredible individual accolades. I mean, you're looking at the Dan Marino's, his stats, accolades, Kurt Warner, Super Bowls. Eli Manning is a fringe guy right now, and he's won 2 Super Bowls. If you look at Matthew Stafford's career record, I'm sure it's under 500, or maybe right near it. He needs to put together probably a strong next 4 to 5 years to be considered a candidate to be a Hall of Famer.
Now, I'm not saying he is, but to play devil's advocate, do you think it's because he played for the Lions for all those years he didn't get those personal accolades? Compared to other guys, I just picked Tom Brady just because he's the GOAT, but like if you can just compare the seasons that Tom Brady was All Pro or Pro Bowl compared to Matthew Stafford's years where he was still very solid and didn't get All Pro, they might be similar, and yet Tom here is getting all the accolades. And I think that has to do with public perception as well. Again, I'm not saying he is Hall of Famer, but I think what needs to be taken into account is that he played for a dismal franchise for over a decade.
Yeah. Well, they made the playoffs 3 times, and they had talent on those teams, and the winners win the rewards. They get the accolades. And if truly being an All-Pro is the highest honor you can earn individually, I mean, outside of like MVP and, Offensive Player of the Year, those things, in the NFL. And they recognize guys who are playing at the best level. So I don't think being on the Lions was an excuse for Megatron. It wasn't an excuse for whoever. If you're the best, you get recognized as being the best. And I get it. It's really hard to make that list, but to be a Hall of Famer, you have to. Hall of Fame is the elite of the elite. It's not the very good. It is the Hall of Fame, and Matthew Stafford's very good. And hey, look, we're just talking sports talk. He's obviously a great quarterback. He just won the Super Bowl, but he's not a Hall of Famer yet.
Wow. Hot take from Adrian. Not a Hall of Famer yet, Matthew Stafford.
Scalding hot take.
One last thing before we talk to Luke Gifford. College football playoff not expanding to 12 teams. I've been an advocate for it. I want it to happen. And due to, like everything else, due to money and everything else, they are not expanding. They will not cut the deal 2 years short, and they will keep at 4 teams. Adrian, I think it's a blown opportunity.
I think so too. But with the ever-changing landscape that is college football right now, with, like we had talked about off the air, Texas, Oklahoma moving to the SEC, and Houston and BYU, I believe, and I think UCF maybe, moving into the Big 12, right? I think there's another school in there moving to the Big 12. Cincinnati. The landscape is changing so much. I could understand that being hesitant towards making that decision, but I don't understand why these conferences wouldn't be on board now when 12 teams benefits these conferences that are getting left out, like the ACC, like the Big 12, right now. With the current setup, I think it's flawed, and you're bound to get 2 SEC teams and a Big 10, like the Pac-12. Why aren't you advocating hard for this? I think they were, actually. I think the Pac-12 commissioner was the head of that sort of proposed plan. But I agree with you. A missed opportunity indeed, and something that you see it played out in the FCS level. They have a larger playoff bracket, but there would also have to be some changes to how long these seasons get, to what the bowl games would look like. And I get it's all a lot, but hey, that's your job, man. Let's figure it out and let's get this thing right. There's a lot of things happening, but dude, you signed up for it. Let's get it right.
Jim Phillips, who's the ACC commissioner, is the main proponent of not expanding it. And he lists the reasons, as in they pointed to too many unanswered questions as it relates to health and safety of the athletes, the overall disruption in college athletics.
Hold on. What does that even mean? What does that even mean, dude?
This is from Phillips himself.
Health and safety. Like, that's what they I hate to say this, but it's what they said about like COVID and things like that. Like, it was a bullshit excuse. It's a bullshit excuse. Like, take that off. Like, take it off. You don't mean that, dude. You don't mean it, because when it's about the money, it's about the money, dude. You don't care about the health and safety. Come on.
I think the main one is expanding it would add like 3 or 4 more games. And that's basically an NFL regular season schedule. I think that's why they mentioned the health and safety.
Yeah. Fair enough. And I said that, adding the games, the bowl games, there'd be a lot of restructuring, but something to figure out.
And then he also lists the new NCAA constitution in a desperate plea for federal legislation in terms of NIL. So that's, again, I don't see how NIL really has to do with the expansion, but that's what Jim Phillips is saying right now, and that's the reason why we don't have an expanded playoff.
Well, my man, Let's get it dialed. Let's get it figured out. And come on.
I want to see more games. I'm a fan. I need to see more games. I don't care. Just figure it out, please.
But playing some more games, see some more games. Let's make it work. But like I had mentioned, like we had talked about, it is changing every day. And who knows what it will look like 2 years from now? Who knows?
But you know who knows something about college football? First guest of season 2. You played a year with him. He's a current Dallas Cowboy, former Cornhusker. It is Luke Gifford joining us. Luke, thank you so much for coming on here on Athletes Unfiltered.
Fellas, appreciate it, man. I'm a big fan of the pod, so it's an honor to be on.
Yeah, I'm psyched. I am psyched for Giff to be on. One of my all-time favorite teammates, and the first captain I had. And him and Gerald just will always mean a lot to me. Kind of show me the ropes, and we're genuine good guys as older dudes on the team, and kind of laid that foundation for what I wanted to be like. So excited for him. Excited to get into the weeds with this dude.
Let's get it.
Yeah, so you guys played 1 year together. But before we talk about your time at Nebraska, Luke, let's go all the way back to the beginning of your football story. I mean, kind of just tell us, obviously you are in a very athletic family. Kind of tell us, how did you get into football and what attracted you most about the sport?
Yeah, so I started playing when I was really young, just like most of us, but I really never had one sport that I loved growing up. I kind of played baseball, basketball, football, and loved all of them really. And then kind of got to high school and figured that football was probably my route if I wanted to make it, and so I probably decided that after my sophomore year and really kind of poured everything I had into it. I still played baseball and basketball because I loved it, but that was when I decided that football was for me, so I went to Lincoln Southeast, go Knights, as we were saying, that's a pipeline. So yeah, I'm a diehard Knight, but yeah, man. So high school, that was really when I decided to pour everything into it.
Yeah, and I mean, you could throw the pigskin a little bit. You're a quarterback, right?
Throw the pigskin. Oh, no. Let's dial that back.
Hey, do not ask Gerald how well I threw the ball. We don't want to go there. No, there's a lot of zone read, but yeah, man, I saw my recruiting process and everything. I first got an offer after my junior year. I think was kind of when things started picking up for me. I was always a diehard Husker fan, so it was as soon as I got a Nebraska offer, it was really a no-brainer. And that was when Bo was still there. And I had, at that time, we were going to Big 12 championships. I just came to the Big 10, winning 9 games, every year. So I was like, it was over as soon as they offered me. I committed right away, and it was really a no-brainer. So.
That's interesting. Bo Pelini. So when was it the next year? Was it your first year that he'd gotten let go? Or
yeah, so that was my redshirt freshman year. I redshirted that year. That was hard for a lot of it. Yeah. I mean, you know how it goes.
Yeah, I do.
And I think, you can say whatever you want about that next staff. That's I think every Husker fan loves to talk about that. But I honestly, you can find good in everything, and I think that Coach Riley was a great guy. It obviously didn't work out, but I think that Coach Bray, he was my linebacker coach for a couple years. He was probably one of the better coaches I ever had. And to be honest, I don't know that I would have ever kind of turned the corner like I did playing linebacker if Coach Bray wouldn't have been there. So, it was hard at the time to see Bo go. But I think that for me, having Coach Riley and Coach Bray around really helped me in my football career.
Without a doubt. Yeah, you said you could find the good in anything, and I mean that's the perfect example of it, Man, you started out originally as a safety, right? Isn't that? And you made the transition to linebacker?
Yep. So I started out as a safety, and I was like skinny, man. I was probably like 210 my freshman year, but I was pretty tall and lanky. And so when that new staff came in, we had lost a lot of linebackers. They moved me, and those first 2 years were like brutal. Like I was not made to play linebacker in the Big 10 at that point. I'm like 215 soaking wet. So that Wisconsin gap scheme was not good for your boy out there when he was a redshirt freshman.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Oh man, it was so frustrating. But and then I had hip surgery my redshirt freshman year as well. Or redshirt sophomore year. So that was like kind of when I started to get comfortable and started feeling good about it. And then had surgery like halfway through the year and set me back again. Actually, it was my redshirt freshman year. So then my redshirt sophomore year came around and really was back to square one. Hadn't really played much special teams, and to be honest, at the time, did not care to.
No one really does.
No one really exactly. Does, yeah. You know how it is. When you're that age, you're like, I'm trying to get in on defense or offense and make plays. But so I didn't care about special teams. I wasn't playing, and really I remember I think it was after my redshirt sophomore year, we got another D coordinator. That's when Diaco came in, and they switched to a 3-4 and moved outside and everything. But prior to Coach Diaco getting hired, I had actually had a conversation with Coach Bray about if spring ball didn't go well, that I was going to think about leaving. And we were on the same page that we were going to have an honest conversation at the end of spring ball, because I just felt like, at the time, you know how it is. At the time, you're like, I should be playing. This is crazy that I'm sitting here watching.
And things can change so fast, you know, your position and where you're on the depth chart, who leaves, who stays, coaching changes. I mean, things are so quick. And spring ball is definitely where a lot of that happens,
For sure. I think, honestly, that's where, I finally made my jump was that spring. And a lot of it was just because I was physically ready finally, but I think just a new scene, Coach Diaco came in, it was a new defense, and it really just kind of fit me better. And honestly, from there, kind of just took off. And really, I started, I think, those first 5 games of my junior year, but then had hip surgery again on the same hip. And that was tough, but I had got those 4 or 5 games on your belt, and it's like when I think your freshman year, you go in there and you light it on fire, and then it's like you get that confidence and you can do it. For sure. Me, those 5 games were like, all right, I know I can play at this level. I know I can play in the league. I just need to be healthy. And then we got Coach Frost and the whole new staff, and it was, I love those guys to death, and it was probably one of the best things that's happened for me. But it's been a crazy up and down deal.
I remember you being injured. I don't think you participated in spring ball, and you were sort of late coming in the summer. And I enrolled early, and I got to know all these guys, and everyone's like, hey, Giffords good. He's good. I'm like, he looks the part, but I don't know. I've never seen him play. And then I was like, holy shit. This dude is nice. You know what I mean? And I didn't know, as a new guy until you'd finally been able to kind of get in there, and start taking those reps. I think the coaches were kind of up in the air a little bit too, but you silenced that pretty quickly.
Well, it's crazy. It's kind of funny to think about because, so my whole college career, high school, whatever, I've had the hardest time gaining weight, So my first time I heard surgery, my redshirt freshman year, I'm thinking, I ate everything. I had to eat everything to keep any weight on, Yeah. So when this surgery comes around this time, I had already bulked up a little bit. I was much more physically developed, whatever. But I'm thinking the same way. I'm like, I got to eat everything. I'm smashing burgers, going through Runza all the time.
Yeah.
I will never forget, bro. I stepped on the scale one morning, and it was 258. And I was like,
holy shit.
My God, I'm freaking out. I call my dad. I'm like, Dad, I weigh 258 right now. This is terrible. So mind you, we just get a new staff. In my head, I'm like, man, I played 5 games. I went crazy in my 5 games. they can't tell me nothing. Like, I know I'm the man, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, they show up, and I'm dang near 260. And I look like the Pillsbury Doughboy. So it's not a good look.
Probably not good weight. Yeah, probably not good weight.
Not a good look, man. So I think everybody was kind of feeling that way. You know, like you said, you didn't know anything about it. The coaches really, like, all they had was 5 games to watch, and then my fat ass running and during winter conditioning, looking slow. You know, like, so it was just kind of a weird transition. It worked out well, but man,
Luke, I want to go back. I don't mean to backtrack, but I want to go back to when Bo was fired and Mike Riley came in. Can you give us a perspective of how that went down in terms of how did that meeting go? Bo Pelini, that maybe an exit meeting and whatnot. Just how did that process go?
Yeah, so that whole thing was just wild. So I redshirted that year, so I actually didn't travel to Iowa for that Black Friday game. So I remember just waking up and getting an email that he had been fired. And then we got, I don't remember who reached out to us about having that meeting with him just for a little closure, But I do remember going, and yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Everybody's heard that tape, and the whole, I don't know who filmed it, who recorded it, whatever. But to be honest, it doesn't really surprise me. I think it was like,
what tape? Hold on. What tape are you talking about?
So when Bo got fired, he had this basically we met at North Star High School, and he just wanted to talk to the team because he didn't really have an opportunity. And so we met there, and someone recorded his whole conversation, and it was like, if you know anything about Bo, Bo was not holding back,
I'm sure it was emotional. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He was letting it fly. So of course, then that gets leaked, and it was a whole thing, And I have no idea who did it. No one does, but it was wild. So, and there was Bo was one of those guys who he's a player's coach. For the most part, everybody loved him, but then it's like anything with someone who teaches tough love, there's always going to be those guys that I'm not a big fan. So, it doesn't really surprise me that something like that happened, but it was a wild situation for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, did you ever think about transferring after that? Obviously being a Lincoln native, that helps. You grew up loving the university. Was there any doubt in your mind that you might leave?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. My redshirt sophomore year, I definitely thought about it after. But Coach Diaco coming in and just a new scenery, that really kind of was like a breath of fresh air for me. I think it was really hard for me, moving from safety directly to playing in the box. And I just didn't see the game very well when I first made the transition. So I think Coach Diaco's defense kind of really allowed me to play in space more and be in a role that I was more familiar with. And then, now I look back on it and it's like, thank God I did play inside at some point, because that's all I do now. I play Mike, Will. So in the long run, it helped me a ton. But at the time, that's exactly what I needed, was a new defense and just a fresh look. So
to jump around a little bit, does the experience playing outside linebacker and safety and also in the box help you with your role now, playing Mike and Will in professional football?
For sure. I think the biggest thing I learned was at this level, you can't play at a high level if you don't know what everyone is doing at all times, And I thought that in college you can kind of get away with it, and not that I didn't know necessarily in college, but it just the scheme's not as diverse, and
there's a different level of understanding. There's a totally different level of understanding.
Right. So now I think it's just at the margin of error is just so small, and even in the Big 10, that there's just the difference between winning and losing is nothing. So I think that was the biggest thing that I had to learn, was just the detail and attention that it takes to win at this level and be successful is just it's a whole nother level.
Yeah, and I mean, kind of go back to Bob Diaco. You said his system fit you well, and I kind of want to talk about for a second. Obviously, there were reports of tension within that defensive group while he was there, and obviously he's kind of tough love guy as well. Was there tension within the defensive room there while he was there?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I never had.
There's tons of things out there about him. I'll just say that. Exactly. I know it. There's stories still being told now to the current team about Diaco's tenure,
and they're all true. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I like him. Like, I never really had a problem with him. It was the way he did things sometimes was just wild, and you had to understand that, like, he really only wanted the best for us. You know, it's not like I never had a time where I felt like personally attacked. My dad's yelled at me since I was 5 years old. And for me, it's like water off my back. You know what I mean? You can yell whatever you want to yell at me, and it's just not going to mean that much. You know, I'll take the good, what I'm trying to learn from it and keep going. So for me, it wasn't that big of a deal. But Adrian, you know how it is. Like, some people just react differently to certain coaching, and not everybody loved the way he was doing it. So
yeah, and I would say, in most people in this current generation really don't receive that kind of message very well, you know. And for better or for worse, I mean, I grew up in a tough love type of environment with my dad, you know, very similar to what you were saying, and I'm used to that. You know anything about Coach Verdue? I mean, you heard him for a year, but he's a screamer. He's nuts, and he's constantly going and going. And for me, like, it worked, you know, and that it's because of my upbringing, but it probably doesn't work for most people. You know, they really don't respond well. And yeah, to say the least, I've heard a few of those type of things about Diaco.
It's funny because even now, like, every time I see or like meet a guy that's played for him at some point, I'm like, yo, so did you play for Coach Diaco? And it's usually the same kind of response every time. For the most part, guys like him and enjoyed their time with him, but like, everybody's got a good story from when they played for him. So
gotta love it.
Can you tell us one of those stories quick?
Oh man, I'm trying to think.
Athletes Unfiltered here.
Well, okay, so this isn't too bad, but so when he first came, we had already made our whole summer schedule. Like, the wait staff had everything mapped out, and then he got there pretty late. I don't think he got hired till like maybe right before the summer. Or no, he was there in the spring. But he saw the schedule, and he decided that he didn't exactly like what was going on. So he basically made it so that there was like 2 days a week where it was like mat drills, basically. But so it was like a circuit with a bunch of different agility drills, push-ups, sled pulls, stuff like that. Well, he made it so that we did it at 2 p.m, the whole team, every Thursday and Friday, 2 p.m. It's like 110, you know, in July. And so the first time we did it, I think I made it like 4 stations. And I'm like, when it comes to running, it's not my deal, you know, like, those things kill me. And this is like I had a good spring, so he had a good impression of me, but I'm still like working my way up. And we got to like halfway through, and I'm in a push-up station, and I go up in a push-up and just full body cramp, like forearms, biceps, chest, quads, everything. He's yelling at me like I'm face down on the turf. I can't even. I'm like, dude, I can't do anything. You know, like, I don't know what to tell you, coach. So Mark and the trainers come over, and they scrape me up off the turf. Yeah, Mark scrapes me up, take me inside, you know, and I'm getting an IV, and he comes by and he's like, "So you didn't drink enough water, you think?" And I'm like, "Coach, I don't think the water was the only thing that was causing me to die out there, you know."
Yeah,
and there's plenty of stories like that. He was something else.
Well, speaking of tough love, then, how did it going from a head coach like Bo Pelini to a guy like Mike Riley?
It's different for sure. But I think one thing that sometimes people tend to overlook is that to me, I've always felt like the coordinators and the position coaches almost have a bigger role than, not a bigger role, but they have a huge role in like development and in the team, and every head coach is different. But I think that those assistant coaches and coordinators have a huge, huge role in how the team performs.
Yeah, and I'd even say, especially at a place like Nebraska, where there's so many responsibilities a head coach has to fulfill that aren't necessarily football and
Right.
this or culture building, whatever it is, like kind of big picture things. Those coordinators and position coaches spend a lot more time with the players and have a lot to do with the scheme and how it's implemented and how it's actually run on the field. So I'd 100% agree with that.
For sure. I agree. I think Dallas is really similar to Nebraska. Honestly, I tell that to people all the time, like in a lot of different ways, like it's a fishbowl,
Yeah.
Like Nebraska football.
Got a ton of attention.
Exactly. And so I think it's honestly kind of the same way like Coach McCarthy to me, and I know he has a lot of responsibilities within the team, but like he has so much going on and so much responsibility that I think having two really good coordinators is like huge. That's the key to our success, So I think it's different everywhere, but especially in Nebraska, places like Nebraska and same with Dallas.
Yeah, Dan Quinn, right? That's the DC at the Cowboys. They got Kellen Moore.
Yep.
Yeah.
So DQ is like, man, he's probably one of my favorite guys I've ever played with. He was in Seattle when they were Legion of Boom, and they had all those guys, Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas, Bobby Wagner, all those guys. So he's a great dude. Like our culture's amazing. It's been so fun to play for him. So breath of fresh air for sure.
Yeah,
I don't mean to cut you off. I don't cut you off. I want to talk about the NFL. Let's say that for a little later. How's that sound? I want to talk about the other coaching change, though. By the time you get to your last year, there is another coaching change from Scott Frost. At that point, you're kind of seasoned. You know how that process is. And what was kind of, I guess, how did Frost come in, and how did you get to know that coaching staff?
Yeah, I think, like you said, I had been through it once before. So, and I was like everyone else, I was so excited for Coach Frost that it was like, I was just so excited to get started and be around him that I took every opportunity I could to like be around and talk to him. But that was the other thing, was that I was coming off surgery. So like Adrian was saying, I wasn't really around that much for like winter workouts and stuff like that. And they couldn't see me work out. They didn't really know much other than seeing my 5 games from the year before, so it was hard. And also from a standpoint, I felt like my junior year, I had kind of established myself as a leader and had really started to take over that role. But then having surgery and being out for so long and not being able to participate in winter workouts, which we know is like a huge part of every year's team,
Yeah.
So not being able to lead really, or at least not being able to lead that I would have liked to, that was hard for me. But I think the coaching staff, like Coach Chins was always great to me right when I got there. We started watching film right away. And Coach DeWitt at the time, Coach DeWitt's another really good coach that I loved playing for. But, yeah, it was nerve-wracking, honestly, because I didn't really know what they expected from me or what they thought of me. And to be fair, they didn't really have much to base their thoughts on. So I knew that I was going to have to really go to work when fall camp came. And honestly, like, I remember going into camp and I was supposed to be on a pitch count, like not doing much, the first day I'm out there doing everything, just dying, but that's the way it was. Like, I didn't really feel like I had the luxury of taking it easy or like not doing everything to show them that, yeah, I am the guy that I've been walking around like I own this place because I feel like I can play at that level. You know what I mean? And I'd never try to be cocky or anything like that, but just like as a leader and as a senior, like I felt like and knew that if we were going to be successful, that I was going to have play a big part in it, whether they knew that yet or not. So,
oh yeah, you got to own it. Yeah, for sure.
Now tell me how you and Adrian met.
Well, man, how did we meet? When was the first time we met?
I don't know.
I was gonna say the first like story I guess I have, or that I tell people about you, is when we did like the SEAL team stuff.
Yeah,
the program, when we did the program.
Yeah, the program. Yeah,
yeah, and that was in the summer sometime, right?
I think it was. Yeah.
So he had a great spring, killing it. Everybody's losing their shit for Adrian, and so then we do summer conditioning, whatever. We do the program, and the program, it's pretty tough, and it's just all about finding your leaders, right? So I think it was the last day, and we were doing the swimming, and they picked Adrian as, I think he was the team captain for. I think I was in his group, and I just remember thinking, like, this dude's got it, like. For him to be able to run this like he's running it right now, like this dude is for real. And all of us thought that. Like I remember Gerald, Mick, like all of us, we were like, yeah, this dude's gonna be the quarterback here for a long time, and obviously that's how it ended up. But that's like one of the first stories that I tell everybody about you, is because it was just so evident, like what kind of dude you were and the way that you worked, that you were gonna be a really good player.
Yeah. I appreciate that. And I'll never forget that either. I remember being tasked with that and knew it was a big opportunity for me, and I had to take advantage of it. And honestly, like, I'm a hell of a swimmer. I have to flex. I'm nice at swimming. So like, I was like, this is my wheelhouse. I'm about to go off. Let's go. And the whole like carry the sweatshirt above the head and all that. Yeah, it was, we did the program again the next year, and it wasn't the same. And then we cut it off. Were you in the meeting room when one of the DBs asked you?
Yes.
I don't know if I should. I don't know if I should mention that or not.
Oh well, I mean, yeah, I was in there. I that's another story I tell people all the time. I'm like, this is the type of stuff that happens in the locker room sometimes. You would think that people would know better, but nah.
No. I mean, I feel like I have to clue some people in.
You got to go ahead.
I'll try and keep it PG. So, like, pretty much the program is run by former military guys, and it's like a 3-day boot camp type thing that you wake up at the crack of dawn, like you're at the facility at 4 a.m. for no reason, like doing crunches and all types of stuff. But when they first introduce themselves, they're going through their experiences, whatever, and kind of fielding in questions. And this young DB from the South, he asks him, he's like, hey, so like, how many dudes have you killed? And everyone's kind of like what? Like, why would you ask that? And I can't remember what the guy said. He didn't like give him a number or anything. He was just like, well, like I served or something, like, and I don't even know if the guy finished his answer or not, but Damian Jackson stood up and he's like, if you ever fucking ask that again, like everyone's like, oh, everyone went dead quiet, like, oh my gosh, like what are we doing?
I thought Damian was going to be like 4 rows deep into the stand, crawling over him and get ready to stick a pin in his throat or something. But,
something crazy. Yeah. No, I mean, no one ever made that mistake again.
No.
Yeah. D-Jax is that dude. Will always be that dude.
Yep, he is. He's such a good dude. I think that was the first time I was really like, oh, like, I can
don't
see
mess
it.
With this guy.
Yeah.
He's gotten. You didn't really get to see his progression, but he, on a side note, I mean, really turned into a good football player. Special teams stud, and played some snaps at DN too for us this last year. So I saw him in there. It was cool to see him in there. He works so freaking. I mean, he works so freaking tank.
Hard. Oh my
absolute
gosh.
Tank.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
What's any other Damian Jackson stories?
Oh,
nothing will top that. I mean,
no, but I was just like watching him lift. or actually even when we did the SEAL thing or the program and we were doing the swimming stuff, watching him swim, I was like, oh, it was almost like creepy. Like he just like hovered in the water with his eyes above, like, and he'd come up and take a breath, and then he'd go grab someone and keep him from drowning, you know, like, because none of us are good at swimming. So he was the only reason people were like making it through it. But yeah, he was pretty impressive.
So Luke, go into your senior year and things just click. All Big 10 honorable mention. You mentioned how you were physically ready. So what else went into that made you just play out of your mind your senior year compared to past years?
You know, I think the biggest thing for me, and Adrian, I've kind of heard you talk about this on the pod last year. But like early in my career, I really struggled with just like my performance impacting who I was, especially when I was younger. Like I still remember my first start was against BYU, my redshirt freshman year, and everybody knows they beat us on the Hail Mary. Well, I was covering the dude that caught the Hail Mary. So I'm like on the bottom of the pile, like my first start, I'm plastered all over SportsCenter top 10, you know, like it was just like, for me, someone who had grown up in Nebraska and like worshiped Nebraska football and had like dreamt of their first start at Memorial Stadium for so long. And then to have it end like that was really hard for me. And honestly, it kind of set me back. Like for a while, I had a rough redshirt freshman year. And a lot of that I would say is because I just let like football and my performance define who I was. And I know Adrian, like similar to you, like my faith is really big for me. And I think that when I kind of allowed myself to go out there and play freely because I know that I'm not justified by anything I do on the field, that's when I really kind of took my game to the next level. And I'm not going to sit here and say that like I don't still struggle with it or I don't let it define me at times, you know, but I think that I'm way more conscious of it now. Like, and especially, you know, later in my career when I understood that it's a game. Nebraska football is super important, but like at the end of the day, it's a game and it's a blessing just to be out there. So when I really started to understand that, that's kind of when I went out there and just played, and I didn't worry about missing a tackle and what someone was going to say about me on Twitter or watching it in film the next day. You know, like it's part of life. It's in the grand scheme of things, not very important. So I think that's really what kind of pushed me to the edge and got me to where I'm at now.
Was there a moment that you discovered that you were over letting how you played define yourself?
You know, I don't know that there's one moment. I think for me, it was really gradual because I struggled with it a lot. And honestly, like going through injuries and stuff like that, that kind of, it made it harder for me. You know, I think my redshirt freshman year or sophomore year when I had surgery, like I just didn't like it would, the fact that I wasn't playing and couldn't be out there and like didn't feel like I had a role really made me feel a certain way, you know, like I didn't feel probably not worthy, but like just like I didn't feel like I was doing enough yet, and I let that impact the way that I went about everything that I did, you know. So for me, it was really gradual, and I have like a great family and support system, and so that was the biggest thing for me, like just talking about it with my dad. Like my dad was always super honest and upfront with me. So that was probably the biggest help for me, but it was never like one situation that changed it. Like it took some time for me to understand that.
You get through your senior year, you go into the draft. Let's talk about the NFL. Take us through the process of going through the draft and then going through that undrafted free agent signing with the Cowboys.
Before you even start, it was a crime that you weren't drafted. A crime. And I mean, it's because of the winners get freaking rewarded. You know, if we would have went 6-6 that year, your second team all Big 10. You know, it's how it goes. And you know, I just had to put that out there. You go ahead, you take over. But
I appreciate that because I'm not gonna lie, I'm still pretty salty. I'm glad with the way it's worked out, but I'm still salty, so I appreciate that, Adrian. But I think, so going into the draft, I kind of late in the process kind of started to climb boards and stuff. And so when the draft was coming around, I felt like there was a chance I could get drafted. But I had a couple hip surgeries. And if you have medical things, the only way a team's going to draft you is if they bring you out for a visit and get you do a physical and all that. So there was only, I went 3 different places or 2. I visited two places, Minnesota and New Orleans. So those were the 2 places that I was if I'm going to get drafted, it'll probably be one of those 2 places. And, it's Adrian, you'll just wait and see. But everybody feeds you BS leading up to the draft. Position coaches telling you, yeah, man, I'm banging on the table for you, I'm really pulling for you, So it's kind of I didn't really know what to expect. So day 1 and day 2 go by, whatever. Day 3 comes around and my phone's just lighting up all day. Basically that. The Lions were texting me in the 4th round, hey, we might take you with this next one. It goes by, they pick some kid from Hawaii that I've never heard of. And then
that kid.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So then Dallas had actually been calling me a couple of weeks before, and they were one of the teams that was honest about where they saw me. And the linebacker coach was we love you, but we just don't have enough picks. We're not going to be able to draft you, but if you do go undrafted, we'd love to have you. They had a plan for me, all that. So going into the draft, Dallas was a place that I thought was a possibility. So round 5 or 6, they called and basically set up a deal so that if I went undrafted, then I was signed with them. And so we had that all set up. My agent had told other teams that unless they were drafting me, not to bother because we were going there. And then 7th round, New Orleans calls me and they have 2. I think they had 1 pick left, and the linebacker coach then actually ended up being my defensive coordinator last year. Kind of wild how that all works out, but he's all right, man, it's either you or this other kid. Keep your phone right next to you. So I'm waiting. Here he comes. It's the other kid, some kid from Idaho State or something, man. So then Minnesota has two picks to end it. And honestly, at this point, I'm it's kind of, once you get to that point, it's almost better to be able to go undrafted.
You have your choice. Yeah.
Right. And I knew Dallas had a layout for me and a plan kind of. So at that point I was man, I'd rather just end up in Dallas. And so Minnesota's pick comes around and they pick a long snapper. And I'm okay, dude, it is what it is. It's just not meant to be,
For sure.
So as soon as the draft was over, I signed with Dallas. And honestly, it's been a huge blessing. I think the situation that I came into was perfect for me. I had guys like Sean Lee, Leighton Vander Esch, Jalen Smith, all 3 of those guys to learn from, and which I didn't really understand when I was younger, but actually Barrett Rude, I think, was one of the guys who kind of explained it to me. Was just sometimes as an undrafted guy, it's better to come into a situation like that because then they're not always looking for the next guy to bring in. They're not spending a bunch of huge draft picks. And that was early in my career. Obviously now we got a lot of big time guys. But it's worked out. It's been great. I love it here, and it's been a huge blessing.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's worked out really well for you. Being able to play on teams. I mean, see you making tackles. It's pretty big time. How was Sean Lee? I mean, that dude's. I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer, but he's damn near close. He's pretty legit.
I mean, if that guy had stayed healthy a little more, I'd say shoe in. But he is one of the coolest dudes ever. He really took me under his wing when I came in. Him and Leighton Vander Esch. Leighton's one of my good buddies, but I think Sean, learning from Sean was probably one of the best things that I could have had early in my career, just because the way he worked and the way he prepared was unmatched. And he's probably one of the smartest guys I've ever been around in my life. Like, just football IQ out the roof, and he's probably going to be a freaking head coach someday, when he decides he wants to coach. But he was awesome. He was so fun to be around. So
now you play your first preseason game and you balled out. One pick, one tackle, one pass breakup, and then you have an ankle sprain. And you were out till week 5 or 6, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
How frustrating was that?
It was terrible. It was just it just made too much sense for it to happen to me. It was like everything I've dealt with in college, and now it happens again, But that was when Dallas decided to keep me on the 53, I think that was like really telling, because it was pretty unheard of for someone to stick with an undrafted guy after 8 plays in the preseason and like a solid camp up until that point, So for them to keep me on the roster and then wait it out until I got healthy was big time. And then later that year, honestly, later that year when I came back, I was kind of getting back into, finding a role. And then the game that I was actually supposed to start playing and rotating, I snapped my arm on the first punt. So it was just like I couldn't get anything to go my way, but it's all part of it. I wouldn't change it now, but it is I do kind of wonder, what would my role look like if I would have gotten those opportunities in the last couple of years, because then again, I get a new coaching staff for my second year, and it's kind of like starting over from ground floor. So, but it's been great, man. I love it here.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm a firm believer, and I'm sure you are too, and things happen for a reason. And what a blessing that you're at where you're at now, and you have had the opportunities, and you made the roster, and you got a chance despite some of those injuries. How stressful was that first process of like making the roster, and like what did training camp look like? What did rookie mini camp look like? Hitting you with a lot of questions, but some of those experiences.
Yeah, man. So rookie mini camp was like, it's dumbed down a little bit, but they just throw the whole freaking book at you right away, like as far as plays and stuff, So, and at that point, that was when I really learned, like, I thought I knew a lot about defense or football, and then I was like, okay, I don't know anything. Like this is pretty intimidating. But it's one of those things where they just want to see how you react to it at that point. And so you just kind of, you don't make the same mistake twice. You just keep moving, and if you do mess up, you mess up going 100 miles an hour. So that was kind of my approach. And then training camp. So when I was a rookie, we had Coach Garrett. He was our head coach, and he was pretty old school. And so like at that time, hazing was like, not hazing, but like, there was all sorts of stuff that they were making the rookies do, And so my rookie year, I had to sing like 5 or 6 times at training camp. Oh, and and this was another thing that I think I obviously didn't expect coming into the NFL. Like, it depends on where you're at, but like training camp in the league is like, I mean, it was worse than fall camp at Nebraska, I would say. Like it was just as bad or worse. I know you're like, really? Like, come on, dude. Yeah. But it was terrible. It was hard. So I didn't expect that, first of all. So that was the first rude awakening. And then you get to camp and they're hazing the crap out of you. And Sean, as good of a dude as he is, he loves hazing people more than anybody. Like, that guy is all about the rookie hazing. So the first night I get there, we go to Oxnard, California for our training camp.
Yeah.
And so they're like, all right, Giff, go get the snacks. And I'm like, dude, what? Like, how am I going to do that? And they're like, well, you get an Uber, and if you don't spend like at least $200 on snacks, don't come back. So I go to Walmart with one other guy. We stock up on snacks. It's like 11 o'clock. We got to be up at 6:30 the next morning.
Oh, I love it.
So that was how we started camp. Well, then every night throughout camp, they would make people sing. And it's like the whole freaking room is packed with people, the whole Dallas Cowboys organization. There's probably like 250 people in there, players, people that work there, whatever, cameras. So they call you out. You go stand on a chair. You say your name and signing bonus, and you sing. And there's no music. It's like a cappella, And I am not a singer, bro. Like,
I wouldn't take you as being musically inclined.
No, not musically inclined at all. So I got up there, and I had seen a few guys go, and they were terrible, like trying to rap and stuff. And it was just, they get booed off stage, just terrible. So I go up there and I just let it rip, bro. I'm singing, I sang probably like 3 or 4 different country songs, Johnny Cash, Brooks and Dunn, I'm doing old ones, but the worst thing I ever did was try really hard and they enjoyed it. They liked it.
They wanted you back. That's bad.
So they wanted me back. And I was like, man, I hate to be good and come up here again. But yeah, so I swear I was studying song lyrics more than I was studying the playbook my whole rookie training camp. But it was a good time, man. It was fun. I look back on it now and it's stories I'll tell forever, but it's pretty cool.
Wow. That's fun. That's really fun. Now, you've played in college, now you're NFL. Get some perspective. What's a metaphor that you would use to show how tough it is to play in the NFL?
Oh, man. I don't even know. It's that's a tough question. I think that the NFL is just so, like we were talking about a little bit earlier, the details and the margin for error is just so small in the NFL that, I felt like in college, any win was a good win. You get I know that it seems crazy when you're beating Buffalo or whatever, or whoever it may be. But at that time, it seemed we kill somebody and it feels good. It's not easy to win any game. There's a lot of preparation that goes into it. A lot of many one-on-ones throughout the game that you got to win. There's a bunch of stuff. And then you get to the league, and it was just times 100. I felt even from the standpoint of special teams, I felt like I didn't realize that special teams, or never gave enough credit to it before I got there, that how big of a part of the game it is, and how much goes into it. And so I don't know. It's hard to put a metaphor to it, but I just think that the level of preparation and detail is just through the roof, and especially when you're playing against guys like Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers and guys that are spending their whole day at the freaking facilities figuring out ways to beat you, So it's really cool. It's cool to be a part of it and to experience it, but it's definitely a whole different level.
Now, kind of going off of that college and NFL type comparison, who was the best player you played against in college? Or maybe a couple players, and who was the best player you played so far in the NFL?
I think in college, probably J.K. Dobbins or Jonathan Taylor. I thought those were two of the best guys that I ever had to tackle or played against. I always tell people T.J. Hawkinson was really good too. I thought I had to line up against him every play, so whether I was covering him or he was blocking, I think he was a guy that was fun to play against, and I thought he was probably one of the better players I played against.
He was top 10 pick. I mean, whatever. Yeah,
and he's been going crazy in the league
for sure.
So, him, and then in the league, it's hard to say. I haven't played a ton on defense, so I don't know that. I guess just through film and stuff, I would say Tom is just he's so advanced, and the stuff he does is just so crazy, he's just so much ahead of everyone else that there's no wonder why he has won as many rings as he has.
He's truly the GOAT.
Yeah, he is just truly the GOAT, But then I think even just in practice, Zeke and Dak and CD and Amari, every day in practice is playing a freaking Pro Bowl team.
I mean those dudes are Pro Bowlers. I mean, they're studs. Dak Prescott. What's it like being around him, practicing against him?
It's cool, man. He's a really good dude. He's a really good leader, solid guy. We really have a good group of leaders and guys in our organization. so that's been really nice. All the vets and the guys that have been around for a long time are all helpful and just love the game and love to help, so it's been really nice. But he's a good dude. He's a really good dude.
Now, have you ever met Jerry Jones yet?
I have. I actually have a pretty good Jerry story. So
okay.
When I got hurt, I guess it's not technically Jerry, but when I got hurt my rookie year and I sprained my ankle, the team was supposed to go to Hawaii the next week for a game against the Rams. Instead of making me go to Hawaii, they flew me home, and I got to ride on Jerry's jet with Jerry Jr. and Steven. And so
okay.
There's a little more to the story that I guess I'll tell because it's your podcast. So
let's go.
It's nothing great, but so anyways, we get on this jet, and there's probably like 3 or 4 of us that were injured or had a reason for going back, and then so it's us 4, and then Jerry Jr. and Steven and his wife, I think, and we're getting on the plane, and Steven comes back, and Steven's like, "Hey, any of you boys want a drink?" And he points to the first guy, and the first guy's like, "Oh, I'm good." And points to the next guy, he's like, "I'm good." And he points to me, and I'm like, "Yeah, of course I want a drink. Like, what do you got?" And he's like, "Oh, we got plenty, pal." And he whips out this cooler. He's got the beer. He cracks a beer open to me. He hands it to me. He's like, "Man, I knew I just had to ask the Nebraska boy. The Nebraska boy can't turn down a beer." I'm like, "Dang right he can't turn down a beer, especially not on this jet we're on."
That helped you make the team right there,
exactly.
man. I think that was a
saying.
good first impression.
That's what I'm saying. So that's kind of my claim to fame with them.
That's awesome. Now, what's the coolest NFL player interaction you've had from an opposing team?
Oh, man. That is a good one. So I did take a picture for Russell Wilson and Everson Griffin once. That was pretty cool. I didn't talk to him, but I took a picture for him. That was pretty sweet. And then I think another kind of funny one was just this past year on Thanksgiving, we had there was like a little scrum on the Raiders sideline. And I was deep in there, like trying to pull guys off. I don't even know what I was doing in there. I wasn't doing anything important, And I turn around and Derek Carr's like, God, I cannot remember what he said to me, but it was something along the lines of square up, like just messing with me. And he was like, if I've never talked to him, but he's just like a super nice, genuine dude. And it was probably it made me laugh, And to me, I'm like, hey, it's kind of cool. Derek Carr's told me to square up, whatever. But that's probably my other one. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's just stuff like that, man. Like you're in the league, and it's so cool to see. And you're interacting with those guys, and you're on the same playing field. It's I'm sure that's pretty surreal for you at times.
It is. It definitely is. I try to keep it in perspective too. I think that's the biggest thing is you never know when it's going to be the last game you play in, the last year you play. I just know that at this point, like, it's all a blessing. That doesn't mean I'm satisfied with where I'm at or don't.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
But I think it just helps me, stay grounded and understand that like this is not a forever thing. It's something that not very many people get to experience, and I just want to take advantage of all the time that I can get.
Luke Gifford with us on Athletes Unfiltered. Luke, it's been a great time. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been awesome hearing all these stories you have for us.
I appreciate it, guys. It's been fun to be on.
Yeah, thanks, man.
That was Luke Gifford, former Cornhusker, current Dallas Cowboy, and that's going to wrap up episode 3 of Athletes Unfiltered of this second season. Big thanks to Luke. And make sure to check out our social medias at ATH Unfiltered on both Twitter and Instagram. And make sure to check us out on TikTok as well. We are officially on there too. And of course, the Sports Podcast Awards are out. Fan voting is open until March 6th. So make sure to go and vote for us if you enjoy this podcast. And always make sure go check out our YouTube channel. We're live on there as well as any other past episodes. Thank you so much for joining us. From Adrian Martinez, I've been your host, Geoff Ekstrom. This is another press conference. This is Athletes Unfiltered. We'll talk to you soon.
A Hurrdat Media Production.